everyone. In this video I'm going to walk you through basic steps of building and deploying your websites in Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure provides you services like app services, SQL databases, virtual machine cognitive services that you can use to perform your artificial intelligence services like facial recognition, voice recognition, pattern recognition. That's not it. Microsoft Azure is a cloud platform that provides you services that you can use for your data mining projects and other similar projects that you might have for your educational purposes, for your enterprise purposes overall. Whereas in this video, I'm going to walk you through the app services for creating the web services and for deploying the web services. Now, one thing that I want to mention here is that I won't be deploying the web service in this video. I will be creating another video that would cover how you can deploy your web service from Visual Studio Microsoft Azure. Whereas in this video, I just want to be beginner friendly and I want to show you how exactly you can create a new web application in Microsoft Azure and what are the few steps that you might need to configure before you can get started with deploying that. Anyways, have a look here. The Microsoft Azure provides us with app services. App services are areas where we can actually create our services for mobile applications, for web services, for functions. The functions are very small snippets of code that execute, and I believe as the time of this recording, these are in preview mode. As you can see, I am having three services that I have created for testing purposes, and I am also having a website for myself hosted all on Microsoft Azure. Uh, the one thing that you can understand is that Microsoft Azure will not be hosting your mobile application. Instead, it will be providing cloud services for your mobile application, like for Android, iOS, or Xamarin based mobile application. You will be providing the services from cloud, and the mobile application, as you understand, they will be native applications. To create a new app service, click on this add button, and Microsoft Azure would provide you with the form that you can fill to get started creating your own application. Let it Okay, as you can see, each and every app service is hosted on Microsoft Azure itself by default. The URL that you can see over here is azurewebsites.net. You can enter the name of your web application. For example, I can enter Azure beginner app YouTube video. Sorry, YouTube. Microsoft Azure will see if this app name is available or not. Since nobody else has intended on making a video for you, so this name was available. Next, there is the subscription that this application will be used inside and the subscription that will be charged against for this application. You can select the subscription that you have, whichever subscription that you might have. Later, you will select the resource group where your application's content will be stored. Create new if you do not have, or use existing if you have already created one. Since I have already created one, I will select the web apps and I will create this inside this existing resource group that I already have. Let's create it. Okay, as you can see here, it has already submitted the application, and Microsoft Azure will perform everything that it can to ensure that the deployment goes very easily. While that is already happening, you can see here, this is the dashboard where you can save all of your applications. The application should not only be the app service. You can store your virtual machines. Like you can see, I am having Ubuntu Studio 14.04 already installed on Microsoft Azure, and it can be pinned over here. Similarly, once you have created your own application, you can pin that application over to here. You can pin the control panels over to here. You can pin everything all the way to the dashboard. Here you get an easy access to your resources whenever you want on a single click. Since we got the notification, deployment succeeded. If you open the notification, you will see that it will show you the stuff that you might want to see, like what event took place, what is the status, time, etc. Go back over app services. You will see that your app service is already in the list. Previously we only had 3, now we have 4. Let's click on this. and this is your app service that you can see. The properties are being shown here. The FTP will be used for deployment, which I won't be covering in this video. I am saving this for a later module. The URL for your app service is shown over here. As you can see, if I click over here, this website will be loaded from Azure Cloud, and it will render. Excuse me. While that loads, please come back here. Okay, as you can see, the monitoring service is active, everything is active, requests, etc. And this is a very mini tool that you can use to monitor your web application. Azure provides you with everything that you can do right inside this web portal. Okay, let's go to that other page. You can see, as you can see here, this is just a simple web page like hello world, or in this matter we can say hello Azure Cloud, and it provides you with the URL that you need to deploy your web application. You can deploy using JIT, you can you can deploy using FTP, you can deploy using Visual Studio or Webmetrics. I don't use Webmetrics, and I also recommend that you also upgrade yourself Visual Studio. Visual Studio community is a free alternative to Webmetrics. Anyways, let's get back to where we were doing. Okay, now if you see over here in the settings panel, you will find everything that you might need from a web server admin point of view, from a developer point of view, from an SEO point of view, or everything. You will get everything right in this corner. The first thing is support plus troubleshooting. If you ever get into trouble, you can get help right from here. If you know how to fix things, you will get everything right here. In the troubleshooting panel, you will see that Microsoft Azure has already shared a few of the problems that you may have. Anyways, these problems, if you are a programmer, you already know how they can be fixed. For example, the HTTP 500 errors are basically the errors in your programs, the errors that the input may cause, or or the errors that may come from a faulty code or an unknown resource, etc. So if you are getting these errors, you will be able to fix them in your source code. Domain name configuration performing slowly, or other similar stuff, they will be providing you help. You can contact them. The activity logs show what activity is going on in your application, like events. There are several events. There are sometimes there are errors in your application. There are sometimes backup events that are performed regularly after a day, or like after every hour, depending on what sort of plan you have and what sort of subscription packaging and etc. configuration you are having at that moment. All of those things will be logged here automatically by Microsoft Azure, so that you can check when anything happened. And like for example, you can see here 4 minutes ago a write links operation was okay. Update website, it updated the website content, which is why it is 4 minutes ago, and we created the website 4 minutes ago. Keep in mind. Resource health. The resource health panel shows you how your application itself stays in the cloud, like if there are any errors, etc. Most of the times this shows a green button saying that your resource is perfectly valid and it is working at, it, at its best. Similarly, live HTTP traffic, diagnostics, and etc. All of these things are made available to you, so that you can check each and everything right from this portal without having to go anywhere else, or to communicate with Microsoft representatives, or any or like the MSCN forums that are provided for you, so that you can communicate with the experts or the Microsoft team. You can do everything right here. So this wraps up for the support and troubleshooting. Now let's go and look into the general settings and properties of your application. These are just shown to you as they are saved on the file. For example, the properties of your web app are: this is the URL, no IP based SSL binding, and these are the read-only properties that you may want to use, like for deployment purposes, like for when you want to share your credentials with the developers or any other similar things. You can see everything right here. For example, the location. Azure is distributed on multiple networks, since it is a cloud, and it is also provides the CDN services. So it is basically hosted on multiple locations, and you can use this portal, this blade, to see where it is actually located. So for example, if your customers are complaining that the performance is slow, the page takes much time, so you can see where your application is actually hosted. And just as a side note tip, you can also add more services and more virtual machine, more web apps to deliver the content to the users who live in a different location, like for example in Asia or in any other, like Europe. So you can deploy a web service for them in their own location, which will like have an impact on the performance, obviously. These are I think this is the main portal, this is the most interesting part of Azure portal, because uh, if if you have ever deployed a web service, you might know that you have to contact with the web server admins and the contact representatives of the hosting providers, and you have to ask them to change your packages, to change the libraries that are installed on the server, and like you have to generate the tickets for each and everything just to ensure that your website is running. Whereas in Microsoft Azure, you don't have to do all of that. You are provided with the controls that you can use to control how your application is using and what is required for your application to use. At the moment, Microsoft supports .NET Framework, of course, PHP, Java, Python. Now, that is not it. Microsoft offers you to change which version you are trying to target. For example, if your application is a legacy application, in most cases, legacy application do not mean the old applications, but like not the latest ones, the ones that are targeting the latest frameworks. In that case, you can always change your .NET framework version to a previous one, which we do not want to do at the moment. Microsoft Azure also supports PHP web application. So if your web application is a PHP based application, then you can support PHP right here. You can turn it off or you can upgrade it to the latest version, which is 7.0 at the moment. You can also support Java. You can also support Python. These two are also different, so Microsoft provides both of them to the latest version. The platform can also be altered to be 64-bit or 32-bit. If now, just a side note tip, if you are using a plan that does not have 4 gigabytes or like 5 gigabytes of RAM, and like if you are using a package that has like 2 GB of RAM, then my personal recommendation is to use 32-bit platform. If however your RAM exceeds 4 GB, 5 GB, then my personal recommendation would be to move on to a 64-bit platform, save the settings, and then continue. There would be a performance benefit in that. WebSockets. Uh, in ASP.NET and Node.js applications, there are many libraries written that allows you to perform WebSocket programming. Like for example, SignalR in ASP.NET allows you to do that. So if that is the case and your application needs to use WebSockets for communication, like for sending requests and responses as they are needed, you should turn this off. Always off and always on setting. This setting, by default, Microsoft Azure has an idle setting for each and every web app that is created. So, like for example, if your web application is idle for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or like an hour, it will turn that application off. That is to ensure that other applications can continue to run without this one having always requiring the RAM and like consuming the CPU. So if you require your application to always stay on, even if it is in idle state, turn this on. ARR in Affinity, you should click on this link to understand more. It is a cookie that allows like user-oriented content on the websites. I would personally suggest that you click on this one, click on this balloon to understand more about it. These are the debugging settings. These are the app settings, like for example, those web.config files, if you understand them. Microsoft Azure will automatically map them here. Connection strings. If you are having SQL databases or any other databases, you can enter the connection strings right here. Okay, these are the default documents. Like If we have programmed in web matrix also supports the similar interface for changing which are the default documents to be looked for in the default directory. So if, for example, you are using a PHP website, then you will be having index.php. If on the other hand you are using static files, then you will be using index.php. However, otherwise, ASP.NET, for example, has default.html or like index.cshtml, which was the case for ASP.NET web pages. Similarly, these are other settings like where each and every directory should be mapped against, and I won't be messing around with these settings. But you can also check them out if you want to. Now, let's move onward. This is the application quota for our application. This is the entire quota. For example, at the moment it is just showing the file system usage. If your plan supports other resources like other network resources, etc., then you can also check them out over there. This one shows only the file system, which is like 50 GB, and since our application is a new application, we don't have any resource in it, which provides and which wraps up for the general settings. Let's move on to the app service plan. App service actually is the plan of service, like the subscription that you are going to use on the cloud itself. App service, this opens up the detail. Now, so basically what app service plan is, that it shows you what resources you are using on Azure cloud service platform, and it also shows you what kind of service that you might change your current service plan into. For example, previously I had shown you that you may want to turn your service on or off depending on how it is using. So at this moment you can see the memory percentage is 56% and the CPU percentage is 1%. That is because the memory percentage would be 56 depending on the services that are running. And if you can see there, and the command then the command prompt or the console of this application is also up and running for the clients to connect through GitHub or Team Foundation services and other similar thing. But CPU percentage is 1.25 at the moment. That is because the application is not running. There is no such thing that requires CPU clock to perform. You can see there are the similar things are provided here: activity log, new support requests, alerts. If there are any errors, then you will find them here. Resource explorer actually provides you everything depending on your service plan, everything that this service plan is going to have. For example, each and every application separately will be allocated everything, like for example error reports, how much data it is using, how many disks are in use at the moment. Everything will be stored right in this resource explorer, and you can see the resources that are being used by this service plan right into this one. The applications that are provided in this service plan, we are at the moment having four. All of them are present in this service plan that I'm actually right into. The next things I will be showing you in the separate thing. Okay, now come back here and you will see this thing is similar to what we saw in the initial part of the video, that it still shows the subscription, it shows the location, it shows the status of this application, and each and everything is being shown. The only difference is that it also shows you how much CPU is being used and how much RAM it is using at the moment. CPU will show if there are any processes that are executing at the moment in this service plan. And also remember, since this have four applications, it will be the cumulative of all of these processes. So do not expect it to be working on just one application or one resource. Now if you come back over here, then the stuff that you will see will only be of this application that we are actually focusing on. Now, this was just a detail of your application service plan on the Microsoft Azure. If you want to, if you change your mind in future and you want to scale your web application, like you get 1,000 users and then you get 10,000 users per month, and you want to change the subscription that you were having since the old subscription does not fully meet your needs, then you can scale up. And I will also show you a rule of thumb that can help you understand the difference between scale up and scale out. By scaling up, you see that you get multiple subscription that you might choose. For example, this premium core has 1.75 gigabytes of RAM, one core, and these services. This P3 has 7 gigabytes of RAM, 4 cores, and these services. And this is the estimated charge that you will be charged. That is estimated because your service might be stopped, your service, like, you may be using other extra resources on the cloud which might have extra charges. So this is estimated, it is not accurate, and Microsoft does not guarantee that this will be the only price that you will be charging. There are other options that you can use from, like, basic, standard, etc. That is all up to your side. You can choose it. Scaling out, Microsoft Azure provides you to create up to 10 instances of your web app. You can change it, like, keep a single instance or scale it up all the way to 10. Each and every package has its own number of instances that you can create. Now, the difference in scaling up and scaling out is that by scaling up, you actually increase the number of CPUs, the number of RAM, the number of memory that each and every application has. By scaling out, you actually increase the instances of your application to, manage the load of each and every application, or to share other stuff, like to give out another URL to other users in a different location, etc. That is all up to you. You can scale up by increasing the CPU count, increasing the RAM, increasing resources, increasing services, and all of that. All of that goes in this one. This was it for app services. Next comes the publishing phase. I'm not going to publish the application, I'm not going to show you how to deploy it, whereas I will just give you an overview of this. The deployment source actually is the method that you will be using to deploy your web application. There are multiple sources that you can use, like Visual Studio Team Services, OneDrive, Git repository, GitHub. These two are actually different. This is a private firm. This is the overall open source thing that this private firm is based on, actually. Dropbox and other similar stuff, which I won't be going deep into. Then come deployment credentials. These are the FTP credentials. If you might have noticed that FTP was not located in the deployment source. That is because FTP is a separate thing, and you won't be using it in Visual Studio or other similar stuff. And you might want to use a separate software for that, like Qt FTP or other similar ones that may be available at your spare. Those softwares will be using these credentials: the username, the password, and you know what will be done. You will just simply save it right here. This is the most interesting part. Microsoft Azure provides you to determine whether the recent build was successful or whether it had any troubles. Like, for example, if your development team was happy with the most recent build and they now want to publish your application, just to make sure that there were no problems on the Azure, you can create a new slot, and instead of publishing the application live, you publish the application to this slot. You test it, and then you swap the slots. So the production slot goes back to the development slot, and so on. This uh, I'm not sure if you agree, but this somehow is relevant to DevOps, like continuous deployment or other similar stuff, because I personally really like this feature of Microsoft Azure because it allows developers to ensure that there is no problem with the most recent build of their service. And all of that is done right on the deployment or the hosting environment, so that you can see that everything runs on the hosting environment perfectly before you actually go live. Then come the API definition or the course. The course, as you know, CrossOrigin Requests. Uh, well, actually, these only come into action if you're using AJAX requests or other like JavaScript clients, which actually request the resources from other origins. Like you want to request an article from MSDN from your own website, and if MSDN does not allow web request to come from another origin, they may cancel the request entirely. So all of those come right into this one. If you want to go mobile, you can use these easy tables, easy APIs, data connections. All of these come for the mobile applications. Like I had already talked that you can create app services for mobile application, which are provided as cloud-based backend services for your mobile that are developed natively for the mobile platform itself. They're not hosted in a web browser or any other thing like this portal is. They are native applications, but they're backed by a cloud database. Those things come in. The most interesting part is this push notification service. I do not I don't use other three ones, but I heavily use this one because it allows me to configure each and every push notification service, like for iOS, for Android, for Windows, each and everything right from one place, like from one code, and I can configure everything here. Notification Hub is a place where you actually provide the subscription keys for your services like from Google Cloud and other similar one for Apple, for Windows, etc. And you configure your notification hub, and then all that you have to do is to send a request to notification hub, and it takes care of everything for you, like for sending the push notification to Apple platform, to Android, to Windows, to other that this notification hub would support. So I really like this feature for mobile platform programming in your own app services. Traffic manager, networking, custom domains. I will come to this one at the last one. Backups. If you ever wanted to create the backups for, like I had already talked in the logging system, that each and every action that is performed on your web application is logged, so that you can come back and check them later. If there were any troubles, you can check into them at a later point. Similarly, if you want to take backups of your web application at every time, or at every 12 o'clock at night, you can configure each and everything, like to take a backup of the storage, to take a backup of databases, and each and everything. Microsoft Azure would allow you to do those. It will show each and every backup right here, the backup time, the size, last restore. If you restored that backup, it will show each and every detail relative to that backup in this table right here. Authentication and authorization is another good feature that allows you to allow the access to your application only to a few persons. It's not similar to having an application like hidden or other similar stuff. The application is live, but the the difference being made is that users also get to use your application, using a social login, as it has also been shown here, like Facebook, Google, Twitter, Microsoft account, similar things. You can use these services to authenticate the users to use your application without having to go through any other different processes that you might be thinking of at the moment. Automation script is another feature that you might want to use if you are using continuous deployment or other similar things, which which require that when the Git repository is updated, your website is updated. When the Team Foundation server build has succeeded, your application updates. Similar scripts can be made right into this one. And just as a quick look, I would like to show you that there are multiple templates that Microsoft Azure currently supports. So there is no one single shell scripting, there is no single C# program that you might want to look into. There are multiple things that are made available by Azure, which you can see. Sadly, it is not loading. Okay, it's loaded. Sorry. It supports CLI, which Microsoft Azure also has shown an entire program that you might be writing yourself. So just let's see if this is for our application. Not sure. Anyways, this is for Bash, Linux. If for example, if you're using Linux, you can use this script to automate the process. If you're using PowerShell, Windows PowerShell, then you will use this code on the behalf of yourself to automate the deployment process. If you're using .NET, then you can use this code and like fill your subscription ID, your other details, and leave everything to the computers, Ruby, etc. So all of these things are provided to you at your spares so that you can automate the process itself, so you don't have to worry about each and every thing of this. Let's get back over here for a while. Custom domains. One thing that I want to share with you is that Microsoft Azure supports that you purchase these URLs yourself. So Microsoft Azure also supports that you can import or purchase new URLs for your web application. So for example, since our web application name was Azure Beginner, what was it actually? Azure Beginner App YouTube. I forgot that already. So since we use this name, this was available at the moment. Uh, Microsoft Azure also supports us that we can actually buy domains. So for example, if I click on it, I can actually ask Microsoft Azure to search for a domain. It will search for the domains with different URLs entirely, and then a few other settings like renew every year. My personal recommendation is to tick on this one so that you don't lose your web URL, privacy protection, and other similar stuff. Microsoft requires you to fill in the contact information before you can actually purchase a domain. And note that, remember that you also require. So basically, Microsoft Azure requires you that you have an active credit card with your subscription. Otherwise, your subscription may be withheld or whatever they might be doing with your subscription if you do not have an active credit card. So make sure that you have these fields filled in and that you have a credit card on the file before you proceed. Secondly, you can bring your own domains right into Microsoft Azure. The process is similar one. And so for example, if you want to configure the DNS server, you can configure it to map that domain to this IP address, which is like for your service. Microsoft allows all of these things. Anyways, so this wraps up for the basic settings of your application, which are simpler ones as we have already seen. There are some tools that you might want to consider. So for example, we had seen that Microsoft Azure provides you with a panel that allows you to notice what is going wrong or whether something is going wrong or not. You can also test the performance of your application. If you are a developer, that you might want to consider this. It will run a few tests, and it is like similar to what Visual Studio Online has. Then this is for ASP.NET. Note this, that this service is for ASP.NET. It maps best to ASP.NET programmers and ASP.NET web application developers. This Zen on the other hand, is for PHP developers. So if your application is PHP based, you can enable this for Azure and you can test it to test the performance of your PHP applications. Then comes the console. The console can be used to have a look at the directories and other similar things. So for example, this is the root of your web application, and as you can see here, it guides you throughout the process of using the terminal to create files, to create directories, uh, to to, to perform other activities like cloning the application, the entire source code from GitHub, or other similar things that you might want to do right from the terminal itself. This was a service that was taking most of the RAM. We go to Kudu. This is a dashboard which allows you to see everything that runs on the back end of this portal, on the back end of your web application as well. So if you go right to that website, let it load, have a look here. This is a backend portal for your web application. You can see the build, Azure App Service. These are the app service relative information. You can configure the app settings, you can configure deployments, files, processes. You can see the processes that are running, runtime version, and each and everything is visible. Debug console, you can choose the consoles, both of them, PowerShell and the command prompt, both of them are visible. You can use environment settings, like what environment settings are available. You can use the process, for example, system info, Windows NT is being used, 64-bit system, yes, but 64-bit process. Guess what? This is configured by that Azure setting which we set to off since we did not have enough RAM. So this 64-bit is set to false because we did not want it to. So we can change it right from that terminal, right from that, what was that? Right from that portal. Sorry. So rest of the settings are also shown here, and you can have a look into it if you're a developer and you want to see how things actually work. So this was our home, 51,200 MB, that entire 50 GB space that we had. So these are the tools that we might have, site extensions. Extension I don't want to see here. However, you can configure the extensions for your application. Since we do not have anything, we can go to gallery and install these extensions. But let's go over here and see right here. Installed extensions, there are none. Add, the gallery will load and it will allow us to choose an extension that we want to add. Since we don't want to add any, we'll just close it. Get back here. These are the same things. We have already seen that we can see the processes, the resources, logs, performance, each and everything is already available over there. This is just the portal interface of that Odoo manager or whatever that is called. What is it called, by the way? Even portal doesn't know. Okay, this is the final step that I want to talk about. Uh, Notice that when we created the app service, it selected the web app for us. There are two other types, API apps and mobile apps. The API apps are used to create web APIs. The web apps are for like HTTP web applications like this portal application. Then come the mobile application. These are a bit complex, but still they are very easier to understand. They're very easier to use. API and web. Both of them, you can think of them as the web app should be the ASP.NET MVC application, whereas on the other hand, API app would be the ASP.NET web application, web API application. So they're both similar, but a, a bit of difference still is present in them. The mobile application, on the other hand, is a web application, is an application service that allows you to create a database or any other service that is backed up. And the native application will consume the services on the cloud. It won't perform much of the functions. It won't keep any of the data on itself. It will leave everything right to the cloud. So for example, if you were to build an Android application, you would select right here and it will ask you to perform a few checks like connect to a database. Yes, you will need to create a database on Azure to store everything, and then you will select the language in which you want to write the cloud backend, and then you will check if you want to create a new app or if you want to connect an existing app. By creating a new app, you will have to download the source code for the application from Azure. You will have to load the source code into like Android Studio or Eclipse or other similar tools that are available for Android programming. Otherwise, if you already have an application and you want to connect that application to the cloud servers, click on this one, and Microsoft Azure has already shown you the the methods that you have, the steps that you have to follow in order to connect that. These are the scripts that you want to add. Like for example, this is the code, this is the plugin that you are required to include in the Gradle build file. So for example, when the programs are starting to build up, the Gradle will look into this and will first of all compile this one. Then you have to add the permission, you have to import it, you have to add this code, and the application will work. If on the other hand you also have to do the same thing for iOS and Windows and other similar things, then my personal recommendation is to use Xamarin Forms. Xamarin Forms provides a very compact solution to all of these frameworks, for all of these mobile frameworks. So for example, if you have to use the same method and you provide the same services to your users on iOS, and same thing goes to Windows 8.1, Windows 10 mobile, etc., then my personal recommendation is to use Xamarin Forms. And since Microsoft has overtaken this, they provide Xamarin Forms for free with Visual Studio Community. So you should check that out too. So this wraps up for the tools. Now the final thing comes is that if you want to deploy your web application from Visual Studio, you can always download the publish profile. You know what a publish profile is. It includes the most common settings like username, the password, and other like URL where the application is hosted, etc. And you just have to click on this file to guide Visual Studio how it should deploy the files, the like the resources that are in your web application to the cloud. So download this and deploy the web. I will show you how to do it in a later video. Since I do not have a web application at the moment, I won't be doing this. So this wraps up, and wow, I did not know we were starting to get some requests. There are 12 requests in this session, and as you can see, Azure is also logging if there are any errors and the requests. The blue ones mark the requests and the red ones mark the errors. Click on it and you will get a new portal which will explain each and everything. The graph shows each and everything: requests, average request time, and maximum, total, etc. Each and everything is shown right in this portal itself. So thank you for watching. In this video, I walked you through processes that are required to create services, know where each and every service property or setting is provided, so that you can always modify your own services. In the later videos, I will show you how to deploy your web application from Visual Studio to Microsoft Azure.